Today, we're going to be diving deep into a topic that's been causing a lot of buzz,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively,
Yeah.
lately. We're talking about synthetic cannabinoids.
Right.
Now, we've got some pretty heavy sources on this. We've got a report from the folks over at Kentucky Cannabis Company. It's actually called The Case Against Synthetic Cannabinoids, Protecting Consumers and the Future of Cannabis.
Wow. Very dramatic title.
Very dramatic title. And they're really advocating for greater transparency in the industry and consumer education. And, it's a really important topic because we're talking about your health.
Right.
We're talking about the impact on the entire cannabis industry.
Yeah.
And it all really starts with a story that I know has grabbed a lot of people's attention, a child's death
Oh, wow.
that has been linked to these synthetic products.
Yeah, it's a very heartbreaking case. And it really kind of brings to the forefront just how dangerous these things can be.
So let's start right there. What exactly are we talking about when we say synthetic cannabinoids?
So it's kind of like imagine you have an apple,
Yeah.
and from that apple you extract just the sugar, right? So you're left with this pure sugar, and that's kind of like a CBD isolate. You're taking away all the other stuff that occurs naturally within the plant. And to make these synthetic cannabinoids, what they do is they take that CBD isolate and then they convert it into THC. But to do that, they're using a chemical process, often involving really harsh acids.
So it's not like, just to be clear for folks, they're not out there growing some like synthetic cannabis plant.
No.
It's more like
Hmm.
chemical wizardry gone wrong.
Exactly. It's about manipulating and altering these natural compounds, and that's where the danger really starts.
So break that down for us. Why are these synthetic cannabinoids so much more dangerous than the naturally occurring ones?
Well, for one, there's just so much less regulation around them. Like when you buy, cannabis from a dispensary, it's got to go through all sorts of testing.
Right.
You know what you're getting. With these synthetics, there's really no guarantee of consistency or purity, or even that what you're getting is what's on the label. It's like, who knows what could be in there. And then you've got the chemical conversion process itself. So you can end up with all these potentially harmful byproducts from the acids and solvents they use that wouldn't be there if you just consumed the plant naturally.
So like if we go back to that tragic case of the child, is that the kind of thing that we're talking about? Like unpredictable effects you just don't know.
Exactly. And we're seeing more and more cases like that. Hospitals are reporting huge spikes in emergency room visits linked to these synthetic cannabinoids. I mean, some reports show like a 20%, 30% increase just in the last couple of years.
It's kind of scary because you think about it, if it's that unpredictable for an adult,
Right.
like what about kids? Who knows? And you mentioned earlier that this isn't just about individual health risks. This is a whole system problem, right?
Mhm.
This is impacting the entire cannabis industry, farmers, the market. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so imagine you're a farmer who's spent years, decades even, cultivating high quality cannabis. You care about the plant, you care about the environment, you care about your customers.
Right.
And then suddenly you've got these companies popping up selling synthetic THC that's way cheaper to produce,
Oh, yeah,
and that undercuts the entire market.
of course.
It drives down the price, it puts pressure on these small scale farmers.
Right.
Kentucky Cannabis Company actually says in their report that the price for natural cannabis has dropped I think it was 20%, something like that, just in the last year or so.
Wow. That's huge. So, okay, that's the economic impact.
Mhm.
But let's also talk about the fact that, and I think this is a big part of what Kentucky Cannabis Company is getting at, like focusing just on synthetic THC ignores all the other amazing things that this plant can do.
Totally. We're talking about a plant that has hundreds of different cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, and all of these things work together.
They're a team.
They're a team, exactly. And they create what we call the entourage effect.
And this is where full spectrum comes in. Because that's something that we hear a lot about, like what's the big deal with full spectrum? Explain for people who don't necessarily know all the science.
So think of it like this. If you were listening to music, right? Isolating THC would be like listening to just one single instrument, just the drums or just the guitar.
Okay.
But full spectrum cannabis is like listening to the whole orchestra. You've got all these different instruments, all these different cannabinoids and terpenes playing together, creating a richer, fuller experience.
So you're saying it's like not just about getting high. It's about potentially all these other potential benefits that we're just starting to understand.
Absolutely. The research is still ongoing, but there's a lot of exciting potential there for things like pain relief, anxiety, sleep disorders, a whole range of things.
It's mind-blowing, honestly, when you think about it. But here's the thing that I don't understand, and maybe you can help clarify this for me. How can companies get away with putting these synthetics in products and then slapping a label on it that says organic
Right.
or full spectrum? Like, how is that even legal?
Well, that's a huge problem. That's what they call deceptive practices.
Okay.
Right. Because what they're doing is they're taking advantage of consumer trust. They know that people are looking for these terms like organic and full spectrum.
Right. Sounds healthy.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds like what you want. But, they're basically just slapping those labels on there to make a quick buck. They're not actually delivering on the promise of those terms.
So that really is where the consumer has to be like a detective almost, right?
Exact.
You have to be checking the labels. You have to be researching brands. You have to be really making sure that you're not getting tricked by this synthetic stuff. So Kentucky Cannabis Company, they're calling for more vigilance from consumers. What are some specific things that people can look for when they're buying cannabis products to make sure that they're getting the real deal?
Okay, so first thing, always, always, always check the label. Look for products that are clearly labeled as full spectrum and naturally derived. If you don't see those words, be suspicious.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah. And then do your research on the brands you're buying from. Look them up online, see what their sourcing practices are.
Right.
Are they transparent about where they get their cannabis from? Do they use sustainable growing practices?
And if they're not transparent, run the other way.
Pretty much, yeah.
So we have a lot to think about.
Right.
Not only are synthetic cannabinoids a potential health risk,
Hmm.
but they're really threatening the integrity of this entire industry, the future of cannabis.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to consumer awareness.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's about being informed, making conscious choices.
Right.
And, in a way, it's kind of like voting with your dollars, right? Like, are you going to support these companies that are cutting corners and putting profits over people? Or are you going to support the companies that are doing things the right way?
Exactly. And this whole conversation, it really leads to a bigger question, doesn't it? I mean,
Right.
should synthetic cannabinoids be more strictly regulated?
Right.
Should they even be banned outright? I don't know. It's tough, right? There's a lot of factors to consider. But it's definitely a conversation that needs to happen at a policy level.
Yeah. And I think it's a conversation that we all need to be a part of. As consumers, as advocates, as members of this community, we need to be asking these questions.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of synthetic cannabinoids. We've covered a lot of ground today, but the conversation certainly doesn't end here.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
We encourage you to do your own research, learn more about the differences between natural and synthetic cannabinoids, and really think critically about the regulations surrounding these products.
And most importantly, make informed choices.
That's it for today. Stay safe out there and keep those questions coming. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.